Accessing library computer data.
Out there are no saints. Just people.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. Welcome back to our DS9 run-through. We are up to episode 5 of season 2. It's called Cardassians. This one aired on the 24th of October, 1993. It was written by James Crocker. Story credit goes to Gene Willand and John Wright. It was directed by Cliff Bole. In this episode, Garak and Dr. Bashir investigate abandoned Cardassian war orphans on Bajor. We're joined by Clay. Clay, how are you? Welcome back.
Good. I was a little bit disappointed because I got excited that this was going to be some sort of werewolf episode, judging by the cold open, but that clearly did not happen.
No werewolves.
I thought it was maybe like a Bajoran kid who turns into a Cardassian every time the full moon comes out or something, the way that he was biting people.
Yep, when did I say this? Oh, it actually aired 24th of October, so you're only a week away from Halloween, so we were almost at that point.
I think they missed an opportunity.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to spoil things for the next episode where there's a werewolf running around, but
what?
We're talking about Cardassians. We will take a break. I'm going to play an audio clip. Me and Clay are going to come back and we're going to break down Cardassians.
My parents follow the teachings of the prophets. What do you think of Cardassians?
Me? Well, I can't say, really.
Why not?
Well, you can't judge a whole race of people. I mean, you can't hate all Cardassians or all Klingons or all humans. I've met some Cardassians I didn't like. And I've met some I did. Like you.
All right, Clay, so I think that this one might be one of the most surprising episodes to me that I've seen so far of the show. And I won't say that with revealing anything that I think about the quality of it, but this is you have never met Garak before. He's been in one episode, so this is his return to the show. Cardassians is the first episode since Emissary where Gul Dukat has returned in the flesh to the show. He's usually on a view screen prior to this. Mm-hmm. And this is the first mention that the station used to be called Terek Nor when it was run by the Cardassians. Yeah, this is the one where there is a whole bunch of Cardassian war orphans on Bajor. One of them comes onto the station. Garak runs into him. He gets attacked. He gets bitten by the kid, and it's revealed that the Bajorans have been taking care of this kid, but he's in a sort of weird situation because he lives on Bajor, and everyone is very unkind to him because of what the Cardassians did. His real father is revealed, and there's some machinations, and then it's resolved with an ending that the kid goes back to Cardassia. I don't know if you watched Suddenly Human with us. That was a TNG episode where it was basically the same kind of a plot where the Enterprise finds a human child who had been sort of abducted by Talarians, I think, and it was raised by Talarians, and they didn't know whether or not they should return him to Earth or send him back with his Talarian father. And they send him back with the alien father at the very end instead of sending him.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think you were on that one. This one's very similar, but what did you think of Cardassians?
I liked it. I think I found the plot a little difficult to follow at certain points. Because from the Garak and Bashir plot line, it was a lot of like going places and then Garak sort of like wryly smiling, and then they just would kind of cut away and not really give you much.
Yeah.
But once they got to the end and they kind of explained it a little bit more, I thought, oh, that's really interesting. That's a very devious tactic taken by Dukat to discredit it. I mean, that's a long con.
It is a long.
That's a long con.
We can break down the longness of that con, but I sort of agree with you that it's a. To me, I watched the episode last night, and I was kind of falling asleep as I was watching it in bed. And so when I made it all the way through, but I definitely dozed off in different places. And then I ended up going to bed thinking that was not a very good episode. So I rewatched it this morning because I thought I might miss something. I think that the first 30 minutes of this episode are really fantastic, and I really like it. I think it kind of falls apart at the end with the last 10 minutes where they try to resolve all of that Dukat stuff. And it's funny to me because the first 30 minutes to me feel very unique for this show and Star Trek in particular. It's a very subtle episode in a lot of ways. Even the performances are very subtle. The way Sisko is portrayed in this one, he's very understated and very quiet yet intense at the same time. And Dukat is excellent. Garak is excellent. I think all of the sort of problems with what this kid has faced growing up is probably one of the sort of more interesting angles on this story that they've taken to this point. I really just have a problem with the last 10 minutes, how it's all resolved as if they're sitting in an AA meeting with each other, like sitting in a circle. I don't really like that. And I was wondering, you seem to like the Dukat machinations. I was wondering if the episode, I thought it might be a little bit better if they got rid of some of that and made it less complicated. Yeah,
I would agree. I mean, once they explained it, I thought it was an interesting idea. And was like I said, it was a long game on Dukat's point, but it was an interesting kind of attempt. But I think they're trying to do too much in this episode a little bit.
Yeah.
Because the stuff with Rugal and just the identity stuff there, I found really interesting. And yeah, I don't know if it necessarily needed so much political intrigue to tie it together. I don't know. It's a tough call because it's like, I feel like without that it would have to be a completely different episode. Like you'd really have to lean into some stuff more.
Well, I thought that it kind of reminded me of, maybe in a weird way, the problems that we've had with Discovery, because it felt to me like they had the idea for this very dramatic, sort of introspective episode, and then they're like, you know what? To really make this a standalone ep, we got to have a little bit of a mystery in there. Like we got to punch this up a little bit because it can't stand on its own as an episodic episode without this sort of dramatic reveal at the very end that this has all been happening. And in my opinion, the reveal takes away from the stronger point, which is Rugal's struggle and like what the right thing to do is at the very end. And it turns it into just a political sort of thriller thing, which doesn't even work for me because this is a long con on Dukat's part, right? Like he's about to ruin his political opponent's life, and they don't even talk to each other after the reveal is done. Like those two Cardassians never interact with each other in that scene, and it's very weird that they don't do that.
Yeah, and after that scene, basically that scene, I didn't find it satisfying dramatically as much as I found it satisfying that they were just telling me what was going on.
Sure. Yeah.
And what I found really interesting dramatically, which kind of caught me off guard a little bit, was the scene directly after that where Sisko is doing his log entry, talking about how he decided to send Rugal back to Cardassia. Yeah. And they don't spend any time with that at all. It's just like, that's what he decided to do, and then he's gone, and it's like, well, hopefully he'll be fine. And then they cut to Bashir and, Garak having a drink or whatever.
Yes.
Like, I found that decision, I mean, maybe, I don't know how many times you can have an episode of Deep Space Nine that revolves around Sisko having to make a hard decision. It seems like they do it quite often.
Yeah.
But that seemed more interesting to me. If they had lost the, political mind games kind of thing and focused and had the episode be split between Rugal's story directly and Sisko having to be the arbiter and make the decision of where to send him. I mean, I could be completely wrong, but I feel like that would have been more interesting overall.
Yes, I agree. That's basically what Suddenly Human and TNG did. So I don't know if they were scared of repeating that story, but to me, it's problematic because do you agree with Sisko's decision at the end?
Oh God, I don't know.
I see, because I think that the episode did a really good job of making you unsure what the right thing to do was. So it's weird to me that they waste a lot of time with the political stuff at the end, as opposed to Sisko has a very tough choice in front of him here. And the episode ends oddly because I think the episode thinks it's a happy ending on some level. And it, to me, Rugal going back to Cardassia almost seems like a punishment to Rugal. Like, Rugal should not be happy with this thing that's going to happen at the very end. And I don't know if they sell that enough.
Yeah, well, it feels like a very, it honestly feels like a realistic ending. Yeah. Like, it feels like a, if you were to take this case to, United States court, I feel like that's the outcome you would probably get. And it's not satisfying, and I don't know if you can really say that it's the right outcome, but it's not necessarily the wrong outcome. It's just a matter of point of view, or what kind of guidelines you're going by. But yeah, it's interesting. It's a fascinating conundrum to be in, because if you get to look at it specifically through Sisko's point of view, you've got the decision he makes feels like the right decision from the governmental standpoint, like the Starfleet standpoint.
Yeah, it feels the right bureaucratic decision to
make. Yeah, bureaucratic is the word I was looking for. But I don't know if that's the personal decision that Sisko would have made. But we never get to see him really kind of wrestle with that.
No, he doesn't.
And I think that would have been a more engaging way to go with it.
Do you put any stock into the abuse angle on the Bajoran side? Like, what do you think? What do you think has happened to Rugal? Are his parents abusive? We have that odd scene where Bashir talks to that other guy who was in the cafe when he's playing Dabo, and he sort of says, like, what's your opinion of the family? And he says, oh, I don't want to get involved, but that kid's been through pretty hard times with them, and they hate Cardassians, and they kind of hate him. And I think he implies something about their revenge on the Cardassians was to take that kid in.
Yeah, basically to treat him like shit is revenge for
their treatment. So what's your take on what was actually going on with the Bajoran parents, if anything? Or do you think it's a weakness of the episode that we don't know?
I think it's a weakness of the episode that they don't really. I think that plot thread was weak because they don't play that up at all. And like I did not think for a second that the parents were being mean to that kid because the way that the kid reacts to having to leave the parents, like there was no gray area whatsoever in his actions, his reaction towards the parents. Yeah. I mean, I think it could have been an interesting way to expand the story if you were focusing a little bit more on just the base story of Rugal. Yeah. But they just choose not to. I mean, I guess it makes sense to me that someone would say that, because like I feel like that's when you have a story like this, that seems to be the thing at the top of the list of like plot points that you could explore. Is like, oh well, maybe nobody knows if this kid is, that kind of thing. Yeah. So it seems like that was probably on the note cards, but they threw it into the episode, but they just didn't follow that thread anywhere.
Yeah, and I think that it's kind of a shame of the episode, because I like that aspect of it. Like, if those parents were, like, even, I guess it still sort of works, because even if you say that the parents aren't abusive, he's clearly grown up in like a mentally abusive environment with the other Bajorans. Because he's self-loathing on some level. Like, he hates the fact that he is a Cardassian, and he slanders the Cardassians every chance he gets. Being a Cardassian, a young kid, he seems very sad about everything. So I think it still works that leaving him there was bad, because he was sort of mentally abused by growing up this way, as sort of an underclass. In an odd way, it's almost a reversal of the Cardassian occupation. Because they've just flipped the Bajorans into being it's their chance to be cruel, which is why I liked the revenge angle. And I think that the bringing that about makes the Bashir decision harder, because Rugal at that point really doesn't have anywhere he belongs, which makes the ending sad on some level. Like, there's no good option for him. And I don't know if they really nailed that down. And I think that those 10 minutes that we spent in the circle sitting in chairs at the very end would have been better served to do it, to explore Rugal's thing. Because I think that I think it's a really well performed episode. There's a lot of stuff I like in here. There's the it's not really related, but when Bashir walks in and interrupts Sisko talking to Dukat on the view screen, Sisko has the great line about like, "Don't apologize. It was the high point of my day, but don't ever do that again."
Yeah.
O'Brien's racism is a nice callback where he is sitting down with the kid, and the kid asks him what Rugal asks him what O'Brien personally thinks of the Cardassians, and O'Brien has to sort of come to terms with his own racism towards them. Bashir and Garak is always quality. Even the O'Brien's Keiko, who's not a great actress, her scene with O'Brien is pretty good, where they're making dinner.
I thought all the stuff with the O'Briens was great. With the O'Briens and Rugal, I thought all that stuff was really good.
Yeah, even when O'Brien's sitting down with his parents, who I think is called Pendar. I think the Cardassian father's Pendar. Yeah. But yeah, did you notice anything different, or am I just kind of seeing things that aren't there in terms of the way that, to me, it didn't feel, I guess to specify, it did not feel like a TNG episode, and my disappointment is when it started to turn into a TNG episode at the very end. Yeah,
no, I would agree with that. Yeah, I unfortunately, I don't really have anything to say contrary to that, because that's pretty much the same way I feel it. I think it shakes out about the same way. The only thing I'll say about the revenge thing, excuse me, are we sure that the revenge angle, like that, the guy was explaining that he thought that this family was being physically abusive to this kid, right?
That's the implication I got. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I was just thinking, it makes it a little bit more gray if the revenge that he's implying is this self-hatred that they've instilled into him, which is not necessarily something they did on purpose, but clearly they've gone out of their way to tell him that his race is a piece of is garbage, and that the Cardassians are awful, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you could argue that is a form of mental abuse. Like it's whether or not it's true. They are, basically telling this kid to look in the mirror and then telling him that everything that he sees is awful and evil.
Yeah.
And I think that would have been really fascinating to get into as well. If this family is, by all accounts, just a normal family, like he loves these parents and they love him, but not every decision they're making is the right decision. Yeah. I mean, and it's I should say not the right decision, but it's not every decision they're making about how they raise this kid is unbiased. Let's put it that way.
Yes. Yep.
That would have been something I would have been really interested to see them dive into.
And that makes the ending more complicated. Like, you really get to a point where it's like, well, if you send him back to Cardassia, even the father has been implying that there's no greater stain on his son than the fact that he was raised by the Bajorans on some level. So it's like no matter where Rugal ends up, he doesn't really end up in a good situation. And if you brought go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, and also, don't they at the end? Sisko's like, so are you gonna tell anybody about this? And he's like, no. So right. is he planning on not informing everyone that his son is not dead?
It's a good question.
Because wasn't that was the big shame, right? As if they found out that his son actually wasn't dead and had just been abandoned on Bajor.
Yeah, I think it was more the abandoned part. So maybe they're saying you can bring him back, but as long as that's not the story that happened to him,
I see. Okay,
you could be okay with it. They'll have to take the Bajoran earring out of his ear, I think, and everything like that.
Even still, I mean, I think that's why I wish we could have got to see more of Sisko's thought process and how he was dealing with this stuff, because that is an entirely different angle to consider. Is what, even though it might be the right thing to send him back to Cardassia on some level, I mean, he's not doing the kid any favors, because he's got this level of self-hatred, plus the fact that he exists anymore is kind of going to make him a bit of a pariah to an extent, depending on how they decide to say that he's alive. So it's a really, as Ned Flanders would say, it's a dilly of a pickle.
It's a dilly of a pickle. I mean, one way to sort of swing it towards the Cardassians' favor would be if it did still have an impact on his father's political career. But it doesn't. So there's no downside to Pendar, who comes out of this thing looking pretty good. He survived Dukat's character assassination attempt. He got his son back, and everything seems to be coming up roses for him. So let's talk about the The episode's title is Cardassians because we have the 3 different Cardassians who we're dealing with here. What do you think of? In my opinion, this episode.
My favorite one is still Chloe.
In my opinion, this episode, a large part of the problem with the machination stuff is the fact that they're trying to reintroduce Garak, and they want to establish the fact that Garak and Dukat do not like each other. And so in Garak's first appearance, we learn that he is the only Cardassian on the station. He's a tailor. And the rumor on the station is that he's a spy for the Cardassian government. So this episode doesn't really inform you of anything about that. It does inform you that he is not completely loyal to Cardassian governments on some level, because he is willing to screw over Dukat. But yeah, this is your first. This is your first look at Garak, I guess. Garak is always a fan favorite on this show, for fans of the series in general, because he's different than a lot of the other characters, and he is always this kind of a characterization. So, what would you think of Garak?
Well, one of the things I enjoy with this show is seeing how easy or difficult it is to spot the guest star through their makeup. And this one was a tough one because it's a guy that I recognize, but I couldn't place him right away. It's the guy. He's a character actor who he played the bad guy in the first Dirty Harry movie. He was the dad in Hellraiser. Yep. He pops up in a bunch of other stuff. He was in Cobra.
Yep. Yeah, I recognize him as the dad in Hellraiser. Andrew Robinson is his name.
Yeah. And he's always like, he's got this very innate creepiness about him. He's like he's a really normal looking dude, but he's also really fucking creepy for some reason. Yep. And that came across quite a bit when he starts doing that like wide-eyed smile nodding head thing in this episode, which he does quite a bit. It's very creepy. I think it goes a long way to building up a level of not mistrust, but he looks creepy enough that you don't accept that he's a good guy right away.
Right.
But no, I liked him. He's good. I think him and he and Bashir have a bit of a they have a bit of a challenge in front of them in this episode, because 90% of what they do in this episode is basically running the search function on a computer.
Yeah, yep.
But they still manage to make it work. Like usually that shit comes off as really boring and just kind of like time fillery, but I didn't really feel that way in this one so much. And I think it's probably because I think the interactions with Bashir and him were good. I think they work pretty well together.
Yeah, I think that one thing that DS9 does better than what TNG did is when they have sequences like that where they're basically just running through a computer record looking for something, they do a better job of building the scene around that, as opposed to just the characters looking at the computer waiting for the answer to pop out. So they, that one's sprinkled in with the fact that the scene built around that is the fact that Garak has to go down to this Bajoran orphanage, basically. And there's you get a little bit of the universe building of the discomfort of the Bajorans while he's there, and his sort of not that he's naive, but he doesn't sort of play into that. He doesn't respond to that emotional response to them. When the woman says she was part of the underground, he says, "Really? Maybe we've met before."
Yeah.
So
I like the part where they had to leave and they had to kind of ditch those kids too. That was good.
What's your take on that? What's your take on what that scene was? I was wondering if I was reading too much into it, or if you thought that. How do you feel about Garak's response to the girl who asks him to take her home?
It reminds me of this might be a bit of a stretch, but it reminds me of kind of like a Cold War kind of thing, where he's sympathetic to these kids, and he really probably, if he had the option to do so, would probably save these kids, but he has to play by a certain said, like, that's not his mission right now. And his mission is to find out, a very specific set of information, and doing something as flagrant as sweeping up a bunch of orphans would just put too many ripples in the water.
Yeah. That's interesting.
That's kind of the feeling I was getting from it. But also, he does also kind of come off as, like you were saying, a little bit like he doesn't read the room super well.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I say this not. I don't know. I don't have any information going forward about Garak. I read that scene the first time I watched it. I read it the way that you did. And the second time I saw it, I read it more as it's not the thing that Garak is trying to accomplish, which is to get Dukat to be done. So he is not particularly moved by them. Like he
yeah, okay.
I almost was wondering if Garak would even help the kids in the long run. I felt that he thought that they were just kind of a byproduct of this thing that he was trying to accomplish in order to get his own end to meet and to get Dukat caught in his crosshair and everything.
Yeah, I think I would agree. I think what I mean by the my previous description is not that he's like some sort of tortured superhero,
right?
But like there's he's got the thing that he's going to do, and going outside of that lane is just not. It doesn't benefit anybody. It doesn't benefit him. It doesn't. He's focused on the thing he's focused on, and the other stuff is a sad byproduct that maybe if he ends up focused on that, then he'll do something about it. Yeah, then he'll do something.
Yeah, I think that scene plays well because that's basically the way that Garak will continue to be written. He's very enigmatic, and you do learn more about him and everything that's gone. But he is very. I think he has in this episode a couple of lines about his lies and things like that, and everything is in the details to him. He has that kind of nifty quote at the very end about look at the crumbs on the table. They're like details everywhere, and when you put them together, you can figure things out.
Yeah, I was waiting for some sort of Kaiser Soze postscript where Bashir all of a sudden sees everything that he had been mentioning the entire episode, and it all comes together.
He sees Rugal on the bottom of his cup, and it drops in his shadows. But that's pretty much it, and it just the Dukat and Garak thing is fine. I think they're all. Everything benefits by having good actors is something that Star Trek has told me. And I think that Mark Alemo, who plays Dukat, is excellent. And Andrew Robinson, I believe that's his name, who plays Garak, are very strong. And they continue to be important to the series.
I think the Best Actor award goes to Sisko's sweet evening attire.
Yes, yeah.
That he answers the door in.
Every captain,
it's like a space dashiki or something.
Every captain answers the door with their arm up as if they're waiting for an escort to arrive or something. And it's
the same way like Dana Barrett answers the door in Ghostbusters, where she's like kind of leaning on it, and her thing is just sort of like casually open.
Yep. Yeah, it's dead sexy no matter what they say. I think it's pretty much it. We talked about a good chunk of the episode. We're going to take a break. We'll read some patron thoughts, and then me and Clay give our final thoughts for the episode Cardassians.
But there's one more question I haven't figured out, Garak. Why did you want to expose Dukat? What's the truth about you and him?
Truth, Doctor, is in the eye of the beholder. I never tell the truth because I don't believe there is such a thing. That's why I prefer the straight-line simplicity of cutting cloth.
So you're not going to tell me?
But you don't need me to tell you, my friend. Just notice the details. They're scattered like crumbs all over this table we regularly share. Until next time.
All right, guys. So if you support the show on patreon.com/thepenskyfile, you get the chance to leave comments about upcoming episodes, and they get read on the podcast. We'll do that now. We'll run through these. Holly McLaughlin writes, Cardassians. This one had a really interesting premise, but the ending made zero sense to me. What the fuck, Benjamin? If a child abuse allegations were backed up by evidence, why don't we see or hear anything about it? If they didn't, why in the name of sanity would a father who obviously loves his son very much turn around and take a child away from the only family he had ever known? Yeah, I mean, we touched on this, right? It's... I don't know if I'd say that it makes zero sense. It's really the fact that Sisko doesn't consider it at all, and we don't get a good sense of the whether or not the show thinks this is a good idea, that this has actually happened.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I would agree. Yeah, like I said, before, I wish they had gone into that more and kind of just gotten a little deeper, because that was to me the more engaging aspect.
Just
of the story.
realize there's no Jake in this episode, which is odd, right?
Yeah, it would be a good one for him to show up in.
Just to have the one scene before Sisko has to make his decision. You have a Jake and Sisko where they're not necessarily talking about the decision, but they're talking about something else that's tangential to it, or symbolic.
Yeah, about like where to take a girl when you want to, get down.
How to get a hand job in Quark's sex parlors or whatever. Joint Mango says Cardassians better than Rascals. I'd agree with that. I think it's much better than Rascals. Stephen Cobb writes Cardassians always enjoy more universe expansion, giving us further information about the occupation and the aftermath of it. Garak is a pleasure. The increased display of his abilities and further questions raised regarding his loyalties help build future Garak episodes. Ditto for Dukat. Do you have anything to say about that?
No, I agree.
Yeah.
I did notice, man, the guy who plays Dukat is skinny.
He is, yeah.
That one, like when you see him like head on, the flare of his like,
the shoulder pads,
neck thing,
yeah,
the like neck web makes him look like he's got this really like broad physique. But then if you look at him from the side, he's like a very, very, very skinny man.
He is. Matthew Ross, right? So is that where? Yeah, Matthew Ross writes Cardassians. I saw this episode in TNG and it was called Suddenly Human. The highlights to me were Garak's condescension, but then knowing the series how insidious is Dr. Bashir. Just some other thoughts. While the special Bajorans look like Lance Henriksen and Jeffrey Combs combined, when Keiko makes dinner, all I can think of is the dinner scene in Better Off Dead with French fries, French bread, and French dressing. The arrogance of assuming that wherever you go, the only thing you want is food from your background, and it's not even Bajoran French.
Yeah, that's... I was actually thinking about that too, about how the Rugal is kind of like reverse Worf.
He's the best version of the Worf character in some ways to me. Like,
yeah,
his story, yeah, but he is a reverse Worf,
where he has no interest in anything related to his home world. But people are still like, yeah, hey, you should try that. I mean, you're gonna love this, right?
Yeah, right. You're from. I mean, I was thinking Star Trek has a lot of characters like that. Spock is like that. The fish out of water character. Worf is that kind of a character. Data is that kind of a character.
Like that's why I love that scene where the Data goes to have dinner at the O'Briens and Keiko serves him like motor oil
nuts and
CPU chips.
I think that you made a good point. I think that you called the ending of this episode realistic. I think the Rugal characterization is the most realistic of that fish out of water situation. He is the most violent of those characters, so it makes sense that his outcome is like his the stuff that's been done to him is the most violent out of everybody else. But Worf, when you think about it, Worf's characterization doesn't really make a ton of sense because he was saved when he was like 3 years old. So it's not like he was a teenager who really knew anything about the Klingon Empire or something. His is much more of the assumption that because he's a Klingon, he would be interested in Klingon things.
Yeah. I have a theory that if they did this episode on Star Trek Discovery, Rugal would be a radicalized Cardassian terrorist.
In terms of like... let me see.
Like I think they would play it backwards. I think it would be like he grew up on Bajor.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
But then, became
he's like a Western jihadi or something like that.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
Yeah,
because that's edgy.
Yeah, that's
negative right. negative and edgy and not fun.
I don't think we can have the Cardassians in this. I'm just being the nerdy outlook here. I don't know if that would actually work.
No. I was just like if they tackled this concept
that's how
on
they would
Discovery, that's how they would do it.
Yeah. Did I have something to say?
Although actually, Michael Burnham is kind of this character, isn't she?
Burnham is that character, except they don't seem to care about it whatsoever.
Yeah, not anymore.
Yeah. So maybe that'll be fixed with bearded Sarek. But what the hell was I thinking? Was the O'Brien dinner scene, right? Was the pushing of the plates where they clink, was that too heavy-handed or was that beautiful? I thought it was kind of nice teetering.
Yeah, I liked it.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good. It's the symbolism of neither one of them like each other, but neither one likes the food. And when they push it away at the same time, they realize that they have more in common than they thought they did.
Yeah, it's like how you really relate to that verse from Rapper's Delight where he talks about going to his friend's house and the food sucks.
Yep.
Like, yeah, man. I know exactly what that's like.
I like that scene. I thought that was good.
Yeah, that was good.
Let's see. Rugal has only ever really eaten Bajoran. Shouldn't she be making Bajoran Johnny cakes? Dukat is clearly designed to be open and conniving, and you can see it a mile away. I do like Sisko's teardown of Bashir, because who said he could talk on their conversation? In the sarcasm, why not 2 runabouts? Well stated. Go ahead.
Sorry, you can finish, but I'll...
Just one more sentence. My biggest issue, Counselor O'Brien. When the hell did that training begin? And just being a father does not definitely make you an expert on rearing children, especially ones as damaged as Rugal.
Listen, being a parent is the most difficult job in the world.
It's literally true. Bending over to put DVDs into the DVD player.
No, I was going to say Bashir, they really give Bashir a lot of rope in this episode. For a guy who's the doctor on a spaceship,
A junior grade doctor, too.
Yeah, he's going on. He's taking shuttlecrafts. Why do they call it runabout and not a shuttlecraft?
They're bigger than shuttlecrafts.
Okay.
They're warp capable, I think, is the difference. Yeah.
But yeah, he's taking runabouts to different planets, and he's doing like background checks and just storming into diplomatic conversations with leaders of other planets to just shit talk them to their face.
He does. That's why. I feel like I agree that there was way too much in this episode, because I really love when Sisko chews him out the first time he interrupts, right? That's great. Bashir does the same thing later when he breaks into the A&A session and he says, I have a few questions. Sisko gives him a look like, okay, now's your time for redemption. There should have been another scene hinting at that a little bit. Like, Bashir never gets the chance to prove himself right. Sisko just seems unwilling to really punish him as hard as he should. Mm-hmm. And
he's never also wrong.
Bashir is never wrong, or Sisko's never wrong?
Bashir's never wrong. There's like he's
vague,
never
though.
has.
He never really knows anything.
That's true. Yeah. But he never has one of those moments where he pulls that shit and then Dukat just like smacks him down with statistics or something. You know, like, and to the point where he turns to Sisko and Sisko's like, man, you just fucked up.
Right, exactly. And I think in a longer, if you stretch it out, you'd have time to develop that characterization. Bashir would learn a lesson somehow during this episode.
Right.
He doesn't really. He's just kind of, he's enabling Garak, really, is all he's doing. He's being Garak's he's Garak's champion to get things done. And that's about it. Let's see here. I didn't mind the O'Brien stuff as a parent. I think that's appropriate. I think that being a parent and dealing with the damaged kid would be better than not being a parent on some level. Like, I'd rather have O'Brien talk to him than Bashir talk to the kid.
Yeah.
I think that works. Last person, Kyle Barrett, Cardassians. The scenes with Garak are okay, I guess, but everything else just doesn't work for me, particularly Dukat's master plan and the ending. Sending Rugal to Cardassia is the worst scenario for him, and yet they play it off like a happy ending. He'd be better off if Starfleet had never gotten involved. Goddamn Bashir and his infinite dabbling. I would be down for a spin-off sitcom following O'Brien sharing his quarters with Rugal, though. There's racially charged comedy to be had.
The best kind of comedy.
This is definitely the year of racially charged comedy.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with everything, Kyle. There, I don't disagree.
You know, we've been getting a lot of crap because we agree with each other too much. So I disagree.
I think you can't disagree when you're both right, I guess, right? Would be the problem. That's about it for patrons. Thank you, guys. Thank you for writing in about that episode.
I disagree. No, thank you.
No, thank you to anybody. Let's see. Clay, what are you going to give this one on our scale of 1 to 5?
I'll give it a 3.
Okay.
I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, I was torn. I don't know if it's a 4 or 3 for me. I'll just try to hash it through in my mind here, I guess, because I really like the opening portion of it. I think it plays differently. I think it feels kind of unique. Just going by our definitions, I feel I could show this episode to somebody. I don't know if it's a riveting episode. I feel it's a little bit better than average, but I don't know if it's really all that great. And the last 10 minutes really drag everything down for me. I'm gonna give it a 4. I think I kind of like it. It's a very weak 4. I'm
glad it's not a first season episode. Otherwise, it would have been the B story to the Rugal plot line would have been that he has unleashed some sort of space virus when he bit Garak.
Yes, right.
That they have to get rid of before it turns into a giant jellyfish and floats away.
Yeah, the Bajorans are trying to send him back to Cardassia with a biological virus in him, and he exposes it to Garak by biting him on the hand.
And it makes everybody really zany.
Andrew Robinson does a wonderful impression of someone getting bit on the hand, though. He really sold that scream to me. Bashir has a weird line too, where he's talking to the Dabo guy, and he's like, "I've never seen a boy bite a man on the hand like that before." And it's like, how many times? Or he says it's like the worst case of a boy biting a man on the hand I've ever seen, or something. It was like, how many times do you see this? I think that's it. I'm gonna give it a 4. Clay gives it a 3. Cardassians, thank you very much, guys, for watching, listening. You can follow all the links to social media. They're all in the podcast blurbs and video descriptions. Go to patreon.com/the File if you want to support the show. A couple $1 a month, you get extra stuff. We're going to be talking about Face Off coming off this month.
Sweet.
And let's see, anything else here? No, I don't think so. If you support the show on Patreon at the highest tier, we mention your name. Thank you, Stephen Cobb, Holly McLaughlin, Jay Stanley, Mike Burnett, Matthew Ross, Magpie Nest Productions, Ben Douglas, Taxel Bear, Kyle Barrett, Joint Mango, Vincent Adolman, Tarek Latif, Rune Vendler, Bradley Killens. Thank you very much, guys, for supporting the show. It's much appreciated. Anything else, Clay? Are we done with this one, or do you have anything to say?
No, just if you happen to be passing by a comic book store on January 31st and feel like popping in to pick up yourself a copy of Redline from Oni Press, I'd be much obliged.
Yep, you can do that. If you don't want to support the show in any other financial way, you can buy Clay's book. It's a good way to do it in a roundabout way.
Very much not for kids, though, so keep that in mind.
Right, yeah. We're past Christmas, so don't buy an early Christmas present or anything like that for the kids. But yeah, very good. You can get Redline. I think we're all done. Patreon, Facebook, Twitter, blah, 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 all that stuff. And Discovery, we'll have talked about the episode 11, I think, before this one came out. Hopefully that one went well. But you can check out our Discovery podcast, which came out Monday or Tuesday, this past Monday or Tuesday.
As you'll remember, I thought it was fine.
Yeah. What if it blows your mind? What if it changes everything? We'll look like idiots.
Oh, well, nobody listens to this anymore.
What are the odds? Guys, thank you very much for listening. I will see you next time.